Two government inquiries ignored and suppressed 46 expert witnesses to name Lee Oswald as the lone assassin of JFK. What does the medical illustration at right, Warren Commission Exhibit 388, tell you about the fatal head wound that killed President Kennedy? And as shown in Commission Exhibit 386 at left, the shot that killed JFK entered the rear of the skull and left a sizable explosive exit wound above his right ear. The Warren Commission's illustrated bullet flight path through the skull and the corresponding damage makes one thing clear. The Commission used this diagram to show that the fatal headshot was fired from above and behind the president, and the Commission concluded that all shots, including the kill shot, were fired by one assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. Case closed, right? It depends on what we are to make of a few what-ifs, such as, what if the Zapruder film doesn't show JFK physically reacting to the fatal headshot consistent to being hit by a shot fired from above and behind him? So in Zapruder frame 323 here, between the red lines, after the fatal headshot strikes the president, he is thrust violently back and to the left against his car seat. Is this consistent with a shot coming from above and behind him? What if the medical illustrators for the 1964 Warren Commission at left and the 1979 House Select Committee at right couldn't even agree on the bullet entry location at the rear of JFK's head, as shown here? So in the Rydberg drawing in 1964, the entry wound is in the right occipital area at the back of the president's head. 15 years later, the Ida Docks drawing for the House Select Committee has the bullet entry wound dead center in the so-called cowlick area of the president's skull, where both diagrams have an explosive exit wound above the right ear. What if Commission Medical Illustrator Harold Rydberg did his schematic drawings without being allowed to see the Zapruder film or the autopsy photos and x-rays? This is fact. What if the Rydberg drawings couldn't be fact-checked for accuracy because the actual autopsy photos and x-rays were to be kept from the public for 75 years? Double deception. What if the House Select Committee medical artist Ida Docks, assigned 15 years later to more tastefully recreate the wounds sustained by President Kennedy, was also denied access to the authentic autopsy photos? Even more alarming, what if there was not one shred of authentic photographic or physical evidence to substantiate the accuracy of any of the bullet wounds on JFK as illustrated by either Rydberg or Docks? Absurd, you say? Then what if I told you that as many as 46 medical professionals have told official investigators, reporters, or independent researchers that the wounds they observed on JFK are considerably different than those depicted in these three official Rydberg illustrations? What if the observations of these medical experts also disagree with the head wounds depicted in the Docks diagrams below? Assuming that every one of these medical professionals passed the anatomy course at med school, what if all 46 medical professionals describe seeing a fist-sized gaping exit wound at the lower right rear area of the president's skull? More specifically, what if every one of these medical professionals reported seeing an explosive blowout exit wound at the right rear occipital region of the skull as represented at right? such as Parkland Hospital surgeon Dr. Robert McClelland, demonstrating where he saw the gaping exit wound on JFK's head while trying to save his life. Or as indicated by another Parkland surgeon treating President Kennedy, Dr. Charles Crenshaw. Or as shown by one of the physicians to attend to President Kennedy in Trauma Room 1, Dr. Paul Peters. These three Parkland Hospital surgeons who tried to save President Kennedy's life were among 20 staff doctors, nurses, and trauma room attendants, all of whom described a massive blowout type wound at the lower right quadrant of President Kennedy's head, as depicted in the diagram at right. Very few of these medical professionals were called to testify before the Warren Commission hearings, or the House Select Committee on Assassinations 15 years later. Those who did testify before the Warren Commission or the House Select Committee about the sizable exit wound at the right rear of President Kennedy's head were simply ignored as expert medical witnesses. Instead, readers of the 888-page Warren Report were presented with the Rydberg medical illustrations as accurate depictions of the lethal head wounds on President Kennedy. 15 years later, the House Select Committee on Assassinations also disregarded the Parkland medical professionals who described an obvious large back-of-the-head exit wound at the occipital lobe as seen in light purple at right. Some Parkland surgeons, like Dr. Robert McClelland, even reported that a large portion of the cerebellum, the green area, was blown away and was oozing from the open wound as the president lay on the hospital gurney. Even worse, the House Select Committee in 1978 discovered another 26 medical professionals who viewed President Kennedy's body at Bethesda Naval Hospital at time of autopsy. All of these medical experts reported seeing a fist-sized exit wound at the right posterior region of the president's head. And yet these Ida-Dox drawings of the head wounds, presented as factually accurate by the House Select Committee, show no sizable blowout exit wound at the rear of the skull, only a small entry wound. Something is not right. Even worse still, the House Select Committee suppressed all this information from its own forensics panel that included Dr. Cyril Weck. The panel was directed to review all the medical evidence, but the forensics panel was given only medical records that supported the kill shot as having come from above and behind President Kennedy, such as the schematic drawings by the House Committee's own medical illustrator, Ida Dox. Compare the Dox and Rydberg drawings on the next slide. The Rydberg and Dox artistic renderings both fail to show a gaping exit wound at the right rear of JFK's head, as seen by 46 medical professionals. Why? It wasn't until the mid-1990s, when the Assassination Records Review Board was formed and finally acknowledged all 46 medical professionals and put their observations on public record. The Assassination Records Review Board also presented suppressed evidence from prior inquiries, such as this Dr. Robert McClelland diagram that shows a blowout exit wound he observed at the back of JFK's head while trying to save his life. So we have the illustration here, and at the back of the head, Dr. Robert McClelland indicates a sizable blowout exit wound at the rear of the president's skull that you won't find on any of the medical illustrations. And then there's the testimony in this diagram by mortician Tom Robinson, showing a sizable exit wound at the back of JFK's skull that he had to cosmetically repair for burial and private Kennedy family viewing. So again, we have the back of the head and a sizable exit wound that he had to close and deal with as the mortician. So, were autopsy photos and x-rays of JFK's fatal head wound altered to frame Lee Harvey Oswald as the lone assassin? And were two medical illustrators duped into falsifying images of the head wounds in support of a single shooter from behind? Or were at least 46 medical professionals at two different locations at two different times, all of whom stated they saw a large exit wound at the right rear of JFK's skull, all ignored because their testimony forensically proves the kill shot came from a second gunman at the far right front of the limousine? Any new formal inquiry into the JFK assassination needs to focus on the conflicting medical evidence. Any new formal inquiry needs to include all the physical evidence and witnesses who were dismissed, ignored, altered, or suppressed by two official government investigations to name Lee Oswald as the lone assassin of President Kennedy. Analysis of the existing medical evidence in the National Archives by qualified experts applying new technologies will finally solve America's ultimate cold case.